Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode of Writers Infusion. My name is Susan, your host. I'm here with my fellow critiquers, Dave, Julie, Ed, and Jen. And our writer is with us today. This is Leah Mercurio, and we're really happy to have her. Leah is from the Boston area. She's a writer, she loves reading, she loves drinking tea like I do. So I'm extra happy to have her today. So we are reading a novel excerpt. Leah wrote a dystopian novel, so we're going to read the beginning of that story. So Julie will do that for us.
Prologue. If I had known any of that, if I had even read into any of those stupid blogs, why the F didn't I just can some GD vegetables? These are the thoughts that kept her up now. No longer is it, did I switch the laundry? Is tomorrow my volunteer day? Her husband, awake next to her, keeping an eye out for thieves or worse. Her only living child lay in between them. Why do I think that way, she thought. Why can't I hold on to hope that she's alive? Perhaps she thought it's better if she's gone. Gone from this world. Gone from the days they live, and maybe she died that first night with only memories in her head of a wonderful life. That is the only thing she hopes for now. Maybe she died with fear or the fear of betrayal. Betrayal from a mother whose love was not strong enough to break down that wall of men. A father whose arms were not strong enough to stop the shields, a sister whose screams were so loud that no other thought could enter her brain, a scream that will haunt Rachel for the rest of her life, the rest of her very short life. As Rachel laid there, she began to think what she thought every night for the last 8 months. She would think of her new life as a form of punishment. If she had just been nicer to the school bus driver, even though she wouldn't let Lexi sit with her first grade friend because she was in kindergarten. Perhaps they wouldn't be here right now. How insane she was being. As if one snide remark not being made could have changed the entire collapse of the world. But it wasn't just one remark. It wasn't really the problem. And anyway, she didn't have the right to be insane? It was all the not knowing, the wishes and dreams, the whys and the hows and the why didn't I's. That is what kept Rachel awake at night. Not the fear, not the sounds, not even the fact that her 6-year-old daughter, her baby, was lying somewhere hundreds of miles away in a pile of death. It was the regret, all the things she wanted to do differently, all the amends she wanted to make, and all of the life her family was never allowed to live. That is what kept her awake, praying for the Lord to just come and take her and let her atone for all of her sins, and most importantly, see her baby once more. Dave turned to her. "Are you awake?" he whispered. She didn't want to answer, but she did. "Yes." "Okay, get on your feet slowly," he said, even softer and without turning this time. Rachel did as she was told. She could feel his back against hers rising up from the ground at the same pace and could instantly tell he was trying to protect their daughter. From what? Her mind raced. Her eyes searched. It was dark. There was nothing. But then her mind slowed. She heard Gabby's laughter, that silly little voice so far away. She closed her eyes for a second. Then she heard Dave speak. "Leave all the gear. Grab the bag of guns. I'll throw Lexi on my back and we'll head in the direction you're facing. Do you understand?" Rachel nodded her head. She was so close to Dave that he barely had to speak for her to know what he was saying. Excuse me. She stood there frozen. What was happening? Didn't she just hear her baby? Shouldn't her maternal instinct be to run in that direction? Why wasn't she moving? What was wrong with her? And then she felt it. Dave spun around and threw their daughter on his back. In less than a second, she had the guns and a backpack on her, and she was running through a street she'd never seen before, running down an alley with no end, running until she was supposed to stop. Her daughter hanging onto her dad so tightly but not saying a word. Her long braid whipping behind her as if it might just let her take flight. They were all running from what she still didn't know. Running from what she still didn't know. What she did was just keep her feet moving until they were supposed to stop. And as she did this, my Lord, her mind, wandered, her thoughts drifted. She thought back to a time when life was what she thought was tough. It was before David started his business, and they were still renting before they bought the house. Oh, the pain that came when she thought of the house was unbearable. They were a one-car family, and on days when the girls had preschool, They would all have to wake up early, extra early, and drive Dave to the job site. Rachel was such a bitch back then. She would complain that it was unfair to drag the kids out at 5:30 in the morning when they had school that day. She would give him such a hard time until he almost killed himself working 80-hour weeks to be able to afford 2 cars. She smiled at the thought of carrying both girls out of bed and into the warmed-up car with their blankets and pillows and dollies and stuffies. How stupid it was that Rachel made them have all those things for a 30-minute car ride. Then she said a quick thank you to the Lord. Thank you for making us pros at running through the dark while holding our sleeping kids. Although only Dave was holding a child, Rachel was holding a bag of guns and some food. She was no longer a mother. She was a survivor. The list of the many things she has survived was about to come to an end.
I had a couple of comments right off the top of my head.
Yes, please.
I definitely want to read more because right away you have this woman, she's on the run, you know that she's lost a daughter, and that automatically gets to me. I want to know what's happening. I think that this is a lot of stream of thought, so we're seeing what she's thinking. But that being said, there's still a lot of punctuation that needs to be fixed. I've marked it up to show that, so that...
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up, actually. And I think, I want to address this to people who watch this also. If you want to get published, if you want this to be in a book or in a magazine, you want it to look like it is. Okay? You want it to look like things in books. Sentences begin with a capital letter. Sentences end with a punctuation mark. And the reason why is because literary agents and editors are looking for excuses to discard things. They get things in the mail. It's like first line, Mr. Comma, out, rejected.
So if you spell their name wrong, they won't even keep reading.
They're looking for excuses. So I totally understand, when you're in the fever of writing these things, you're typing 90 miles an hour. But then when you're done, you got to go back. You got to, straighten out as many of the grammar, punctuation things as possible, because you have to give it to these people clean.
And beyond that, it's also as a reader, that if the punctuation isn't there, it's just not clear.
Right.
There were a couple of sentences I read that I had to read a couple of times, and then I got the right feeling for them, and I read them correctly, but a couple of times I didn't just because of the punctuation.
Right.
But that can be clearly cleaned up, and we did help you with some punctuation. I'm sorry for having mispronounced or emphasized some sentences.
No. But I think that's a symptom of what Sue and
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
think of punctuation as if you were driving with no traffic signals.
Yeah.
Punctuation,
Yes.
traffic signals.
Right.
Stop at the right place or else somebody's going to crash. Well, that's what happened with the reading.
Yeah.
It was obvious.
They're absolutely necessary. Yeah.
Okay, so as to the merits of this, I mean, there's good tension in this.
Yes.
I mean, it's vague but scary. Like, we don't know what's going on, but these people are in trouble. I mean, and that really comes through. Like, these people are, they're in trouble. We don't know why, but this is scary stuff.
See, now, when I was reading it, I thought it might be an even more powerful scene if the action started almost right away. I thought it was really good we knew that she had lost her daughter right away, because that's something that grabs the reader.
Right.
And then from there, maybe everyone will disagree, but if they get up right away and they start moving and she's thinking some of this as they're going, then you can be describing what she's seeing. It's dark. We want to see what's around them as they're escaping. Maybe they're waiting for people to pop up. And it's all very tense the whole time they're moving, and we're also hearing her thoughts at the same time.
Okay.
And also, that being said, when they did get up to go, she was saying she had no idea where they were going or why they were going.
Right.
But if you're lying there with your husband and your kid, and all of a sudden he says you have to go, you're going to say why?
Right.
So, and maybe there's a reason she doesn't know, but she would kind of have to know what was coming or something.
Or if she doesn't know, maybe you can say that. It's like she wanted to know why, but she couldn't ask him. Or, that.
Yes,
there
was a time, yeah.
If you're not going to tell the reader, the reader's still going to think these things. So you bring them up and you dismiss them. It's like,
Okay.
she wanted to know why, but she couldn't know, she couldn't ask him because, whatever the reason was.
But it did
And
say
you dismiss it.
she was to keep running, keep her feet moving until they were supposed to stop, and I wrote, how would she know?
Right.
How would you know? It has great potential. I wrote to you, it's a wonderful dystopian piece. Boy, that sounds odd to say wonderful and dystopian.
Oxymoron here.
Right. But I wanted you to clarify, I need to establish some things, elaborate on a few things. Establish the time. Is this after World War III or after the meteor hit? I wrote after the Smurfs gained control, world domination. Something to know what's happening, or you get into that later, but we want to know. You also have the parents protecting the child, she's between them, and then they stand up. They can't stand up with her sandwich between them.
picture.
So figure out how, if he
Yeah.
cuddles her, or if he leaves her on the ground until they are upright. It's a
Right.
minor point, but
I
just
see
you
that
are,
point.
you
Yeah.
details, great details, attention to detail in other areas. I'd like you to add there.
Absolutely.
I'd like to just say a word about setting. So, and again, I love, and I am one of the people that reads all the stupid blogs. So I'm like, yes, she should have, but, I don't know where they are. Like, I don't know, I can't picture where they are. I think you get into your protagonist's head really well, which is something that I struggle with. So I definitely commend you on that. But I couldn't picture where they are. Are they in a tent? Are they in the woods? Are they still in the house?
Yes.
Like, you need to establish, you want to add some setting in there. I want
Okay.
to know what's around them. I didn't
Yeah, I didn't even know if they were like in a bed or just
Yes, I
lying
wrote
on the
that.
I don't think they
ground.
were.
Like a
Yeah.
sleeping
Yes.
bag.
No.
They weren't.
They weren't. But
Yeah,
okay.
and she wasn't reading those blogs, then, how did they get those guns? And so they did have
And
some
food.
supplies. So
Where's the food
there was
being
some
kept?
prepping,
Yes.
some prepping they did, or maybe not, maybe they stole, they had to scavenge. So it really, I think you should focus on the setting, especially in the first 2 pages.
Okay.
And I thought that, I had trouble keeping track who was who, so I wasn't sure who Lexi was and Gabby was, and I wasn't even sure who Rachel was until page 2. So I just, and I kind of marked it up here,
I did the same thing.
If you just name
It was
them
an
as you
easy
introduce them,
fix.
her
Which girl was how old? Yes.
her 3-year-old Gabby was lying beside her.
Okay,
Her
yes.
6-year-old Lexi was, gone, and I didn't know who the men were in the shields. I'm like, when I think of a wall of men, I was like, oh my gosh, like, did they take this little girl and murder her? Were they police? Like, there's part of what you have to do to hold back so that the reader wants to keep reading to figure it out, but you don't want to do too much of it because then we just get confused.
Right.
So I would say just add a few more things, not too much, right? But just a little bit more, and I did mark it up in my.
I did the same. It was a pretty
Yeah.
easy fix
Yeah.
with that, with
They're
knowing
easy
who
fixes,
Rachel was
yeah.
and who was talking. It was
Yeah,
very
those are easy fixes.
Another question, why is this the prologue? Would this make a better chapter 1? And if this is the prologue and you're married to that, I absolutely respect it. How does chapter 1 start? And
8
when
months
does it
before.
start? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I had a comment too that came up when we were talking about reading this piece and the swear words at the beginning,
Yes.
which personally I do my own fair share of swearing off camera. And
She really does.
using,
We can all
but
attest to that.
so this brought up a whole thing about usage of words.
Mhm.
And I'm totally fine reading a book with plenty of swears in it. But that being said, and this character, once she gets going, doesn't seem like she swears at all. And because she doesn't swear, I honestly don't think you need that at the beginning that she's swearing. I don't think you need that to capture the reader. I once remember going to a conference and the agents, something came up about swear words at the very first page, and it totally depends on the story and who's talking.
Right.
But if it's not required, then you're almost better off not doing it.
Right, it doesn't fit her character.
Right.
Or
If
be
it
consistent-
did,
be
then it's
consistent with
totally.
it, yeah.
Right,
Yes,
that's
yes.
right. If she swears all the time, then have her keep going.
Right, which she doesn't, so.
So then you don't need it.
Yeah, okay,
This-
good point, great point.
The story starts off like an awful lot of movies, moving quickly, tension. So I think you have a great opening scene, but it's jumbled. And I wrote down several times, repeat. You've said the same thing several times to make sure that we understand what you're trying to say.
Okay,
You have to give the reader some credit.
right,
The reader, okay, I get it, let's get on with it. Let's get on with the story. There was a time when I just wanted to throw down the story. I read it 3 times. I read it 3 times because I was so confused. I didn't know where it was going or what was happening.
Neither does she. Rachel?
And then I looked up dystopian. I literally looked it up because I didn't know, maybe I didn't understand what it is. And did you know it's the opposite of utopia? Did you?
I looked it up and I
didn't
read
know
it
that.
too.
Dystopian is, everything's bad.
Yes.
yes,
I'm afraid because there's so much repetition, it sounds like whining. This is bad, and this is bad, and why didn't I do this?
Yes.
Once you've established a problem, move on.
Okay.
Okay, just, and seriously, and I think if you reread it.
I was worried she would come across that way as well, and that's not
As-
100% how I want to portray her.
Right.
Oh, no, you don't, you
Right.
don't, there's no sympathy for a kvetch, as we
Right.
say, a whiner. You know, it's, okay, she's got problems, she's made mistakes, how are we going to solve them? You want to see her in action as opposed to
Right.
receiving trouble.
Some of this might be like taking it outside of her head. I mean, instead of saying, oh, things are terrible, you might say, they walked by a pile of bodies that dogs were eating, or, stuff
Yes.
like that.
Okay.
So it's not in her head that this is bad, it's, this is bad.
You're showing.
Right.
Yes,
you
give
know?
evidence.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So, that might be part of it.
Yeah, I think you've got a good story in your head. What you've got to do is sift through and make sure that you come across, like make a list of the things that are important and stick to those as opposed to, and again, I'll be the curmudgeon. Line of thought, what do you call it?
Stream of
Stream of consciousness drives me crazy.
Okay.
Get on with
my
the
whole
story. I don't want to hear what
my whole world.
Yeah, please just do it. Just, maybe I'm just too traditional. But
Yes.
stream of consciousness, oh, man.
And you know what, to go along, I'm okay with stream of consciousness, but as I said, if you change this a little bit so that they're kind of on the run while she's thinking,
Right.
then we're kind of with her, plus we're worried about where they're going, and we're hearing her thoughts while they're worried about what's around the
There's
next
movement,
corner.
physical movement, and the
So-
story's moving.
And
Right.
as Dave said, you always want to make sure that it's always a new thing that she's thinking.
Right.
That's all, so.
And I think one thing that every writer should do is, once they're done, is read the work out loud to yourself.
Yes.
Because you will catch so many things, really, not just in your head, read it out loud. And you will even hear the word echoes. So for example, we have a sentence here. As she did this, her mind wandered, her thought drifted. She thought back to the time when life was what she thought was tough.
Okay.
You'll hear the word echo, and you'll hear it not flow, and then you'll find different word choices.
right.
And you'll
Yes.
find, the misspells and phrases, and
Yes.
definitely hearing it out loud. You probably did it while you were reading it here. You probably picked up on a few things,
Yes.
yourself. So there's definitely a good, a good habit to get into.
Well, while we're analyzing words, if I could look at the last sentence, the list of the many things she has survived was about to come to an end. If the things she has survived is about to come to an end, so
It's
is
ambiguous.
she.
Yeah, that's
I'm
what it
afraid.
is, right?
Yeah, she's going to come to it.
Yeah,
So I said, if she doesn't
not
survive, we're
necessarily.
without a main character, but this is a prologue.
Not
Yes.
necessarily. See, I think that it's ambiguous, because I think you can take it two ways. Either because she's not going to survive,
Yes.
or because there are no more things that are going to threaten her. It's like,
Oh,
oh, I'm at
so-
the end of the list of things.
She becomes
Cool.
super.
I thought it meant she was
Awesome.
Savannah.
Yes.
See, that's the thing, it's ambiguous, so you have to,
Or the world was about to be saved.
The Smurfs.
either way.
Smurfette.
I'd like to see the revision of this.
Yes,
I would love-
absolutely.
I would love to see the first 5 pages of your story, nothing further than what you've gone here, but crystallized,
Tighter.
because there's all kinds of good stuff in here.
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you so much for coming. and for
Yes,
sharing
no,
your
thank you for
story.
having me, and I appreciate all of, your ideas and thoughts, and I will take each and every one of them and work with them.
Thank you.
You grow to hate us.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
No, we're your cup of tea. We're your cup of
Yes,
tea.
you are, you
All right, well,
are.
thank you, Leah. And
Thank you
thank
very
you, everyone,
much.
for watching this episode of Writers Infusion. We'll see you next time, and keep writing.
So I'm dying to know what happened to Lexi. I'm sure you'll do like a back, you'll look back and tell
See,
us
Leah and I
eventually
talked,
what
so I
happened
know
with the
Yes,
baby.
Lauren.
Yes.
Pile
It's
of death
got a
worries me
great
a little
story.
bit. Pile of death worries me a little bit.
Yeah.
Pile of
should.
death. I put a
It
question mark.